doesn't he fight back?
Because he still remembers who he is.
Then why do they keep pushing him?
Because they think restraint means weakness.
And why are they afraid now?
Because they finally found out restraint has a limit.
What happened when they crossed it?
The monster woke up. Not the kind they warned you about in stories. Not some mindless thing smashing everything in front of it. Something worse. Something awake. Something patient. Something that had spent years sitting behind your ribs, listening to every insult, every betrayal, every little moment you told yourself, let it go, let it go, let it go. You became very good at letting things go. So good that people started confusing your silence with permission. They thought because you did not react, you did not notice. Because you did not shout, you did not remember. Because you stayed calm, nothing inside you was changing. That was their mistake. The quiet man is not empty. He is collecting information. He is measuring the room. He is learning who you become when you think there are no consequences. And for years, you gave people more chances than they deserved. Not because you were weak, because you knew what you were capable of when you stopped caring. That is the part nobody understood. You were not afraid of them. You were afraid of becoming someone you could not respect, so you held yourself back. You swallowed sentences sharp enough to split a room. You walked away from arguments you could have won. You apologized first, because peace mattered more than pride. You stayed composed while people mistook your patience for fear. You let people have the last word because you knew the last word is not always the truth. And they loved that version of you. Of course they did. He was safe, predictable. He could be provoked and still stay reasonable. He could be disrespected and still explain himself politely. He could be betrayed and somehow spend the night wondering what he had done wrong. That man made everybody comfortable. Everybody except himself. There is a cost to being the calmest person in every room. Nobody sees the pressure. They only see the stillness. Nobody sees your jaw locking when somebody crosses a line you already explained twice. Nobody sees you sitting in the car afterward, engine off, replaying the conversation, and wondering how much of yourself you are supposed to keep sacrificing just to prove you are mature. Nobody hears the argument that happens after the argument. The one between you and you. One voice says, enough. The other says, be patient. One says, leave. The other says, maybe they did not mean it. One says, you would never do this to them. The other says, that does not mean they are like you. And every time, the patient voice won, until it didn't. That is how monsters wake up. Not with thunder, with exhaustion. People imagine transformation as fire. Sometimes it is simply the moment a man gets tired of negotiating against his own instincts. One day you hear yourself making another excuse for somebody, and the words sound ridiculous in your mouth. You stop halfway through the sentence. Something inside you says, why are we still doing this? That question changes everything. Why are we still proving? Why are we still explaining? Why are we still waiting for someone to become the version of themselves they only perform when they are afraid of losing access? Why are we still giving loyalty to people who only remember loyalty when it benefits them? Why are we still protecting people from the consequences of how they treat us? Why? And for the first time, there is no beautiful answer. No loyalty, no love, no history. Just fear. Fear of leaving, fear of being alone, fear of being cold, Fear of becoming the villain in a story where you spent years quietly bleeding. That realization did not make me angry. It embarrassed me, because I saw how often people had tested me, and how often I had helped them reset the experiment. They cross the line. I forgive. They cross another. I explain. They cross another. I withdraw. They apologize. I return. Test complete. Result: he will come back. That is what I had trained them to believe. And people act differently around what they believe cannot be lost. They become careless. That is human nature more often than people admit. When something feels permanent, people stop protecting it. They stop noticing the little damage. They assume tomorrow will repair what they break tonight. I became tomorrow. Always tomorrow. Always another chance. Always another conversation. Then one day tomorrow did not come. That was the first sign the monster had opened its eyes. I stopped rushing to fix the tension. Let it sit. I stopped explaining every boundary. Let them misunderstand. I stopped responding to every accusation. Let the lie echo until it got tired of hearing itself. I stopped asking people why they changed. I watched. That was colder. Much colder. Because questions still give people a chance to perform. Observation does not. When you stop interrupting people, they reveal themselves with incredible efficiency. Let them talk. Let them forget what they said last month. Let them make promises. Let them break them. Do not correct the pattern too early. Patterns are shy around confrontation. But give them time. They come back. Same face. Different day. That is how I learned. Not from one betrayal. From repetition. The monster did not wake because someone hurt me once. He woke because I finally understood the system. Some people were not making mistakes. They were making choices I kept relabeling as mistakes, because the word choice would have forced me to act. A mistake can be forgiven. A pattern must be respected. I respect patterns now. That makes me difficult. Good. I used to be easy. Easy to guilt. Easy to pull back. Easy to provoke into explaining myself. Easy to keep around with a few soft words after a hard week. Easy to access because I confused familiarity with trust. That version of me nearly died from being understandable. Everybody knew which button to press. The guilt button. You've changed. The loyalty button. After everything we've been through. The sympathy button. I'm going through a lot right now. The fear button. Maybe we should just be done. Those buttons used to work. You press them now and nothing happens. That is what scares people. Not anger. A man who can no longer be controlled by the threat of losing what is already destroying him. That man moves differently. He hears "I'll leave" and thinks, then go. Not because he feels nothing, because he finally knows what staying has been costing. He hears, "You're selfish," and asks, according to who? The people who benefited when I had no limits? He hears, "You're cold now," and almost laughs. Cold? You called me warm when I was burning alive. Of course I am colder. I learned temperature control. That is what the monster is. Control. Everyone expected rage. Rage is easy. Rage is predictable. Rage exhausts itself. What woke up in me was precision. The ability to feel everything and still choose the move. That is far more dangerous than anger. Anger wants to hit the table. Precision wants to know why you are still sitting at it. Anger wants to win the argument. Precision asks whether the argument deserves another minute. Anger wants revenge. Precision removes access. No speech, no ceremony, no final performance, just distance. That was new for me. People say the monster woke up when I stopped coming back. The truth is simpler. The monster was always there. You were just meeting the part of me I kept chained for your comfort. That line matters. I kept him chained, not because he was evil, because he was honest. Too honest. He knew which relationships were dead long before I admitted it. He knew which promises were theater. He knew which rooms required me to shrink. He knew when somebody loved my usefulness more than my presence. He knew, and I kept telling him to be quiet, be kind, be patient. Give them time. He sat there, years, watching me hand away pieces of our life to people he had already measured correctly. Imagine how angry you become at yourself when your instincts were right and you betrayed them anyway. That is the anger nobody talks about. Not anger at them, anger at the version of you who knew and stayed. That anger is clean, useful. It is the hand on your back that finally pushes you through the door. I stopped asking, why did they do this? I started asking, why am I still allowing it? One question creates victims, the other creates decisions. That was the awakening. Decision, not emotion. I decided some people would lose access. I decided some explanations were finished. I decided history was not a lifetime contract. I decided love without respect was not enough. I decided being needed was not the same as being valued. I decided if peace required me to betray myself, then the price was too high. Those decisions scared people, because the old me could always be negotiated with. The monster could not because he refused to listen, because he had already listened too long. There comes a point when more information is just delay. You know enough. You have seen enough. The pattern has finished introducing itself. The only thing missing is your courage. That is where I had been stuck. I kept asking for certainty, 100% proof, a final sign, something so undeniable I could leave without guilt. Life rarely gives that. It gives you 50 small things and watches whether you respect the total. The monster respected the total. He did not need one final betrayal. That was another difference. I stopped waiting for destruction to become undeniable. Experience had already taught me enough. And the funniest part, the cage door was open, always had been. Fear was the lock. Fear of who I would be without the role. The fixer, the loyal one, the dependable one, the good man. I had built my identity around being the person who could take more, so stopping felt like failure. Who am I if I do not absorb everything? Who am I if I disappoint people? Who am I if somebody calls me selfish, and I do not rush to prove them wrong? Who am I if I become the bad guy in someone else's version? Free. That was the answer. Free. And freedom looks monstrous to people who depended on your captivity. That is worth repeating. Freedom looks monstrous to people who depended on your captivity. Your no looks cruel to someone who built a life around your yes. Your silence looks arrogant to someone who used to receive paragraphs. Your distance looks like revenge. to someone who never expected consequence. Your peace looks offensive to people who thought your pain proved their importance. Let it offend them. You are not responsible for making your boundaries emotionally convenient for the people who made them necessary. That sentence would have saved me years. I know it now. And once you know it, the monster stops feeling like a monster. He feels like a guard. That is what he really was. A guard I kept locked away. He was not trying to destroy my humanity. He was trying to protect what was left of it, because there was still something soft in me. There still is. That surprises people. They see the colder eyes, the smaller circle, the faster exits. They assume I stopped caring. No, I did not lose my humanity. I simply stopped offering it without protection. I had fought myself long enough, so the monster changed sides. He stopped fighting my instincts, started fighting the habits that kept me trapped. I stopped performing the transformation and started living it. No speech every morning, no war music, no enemy, just discipline. That is where the monster became useful. He stopped being anger, became structure. Wake up anyway. Do it anyway. Keep your word to yourself, especially when nobody would know if you broke it. That rebuilt me faster than any revenge ever could. Because every kept promise put another brick under my feet. I became someone I trusted. Do you know what happens when a man trusts himself? Threats change, loss changes, uncertainty changes. He knows if everything falls apart, one person will still be there. Him. That self-trust changed what people called dangerous in me. Your time, your body, your standards, your yes, your no. People will call this darkness because darkness is the easiest word for a man they can no longer access the old way. Fine, call it dark. I have been called worse by people I once loved more. Words lost weight after that. I know who I am. That took years. Pain stripped away the versions I had built for approval. The agreeable version, the harmless version, the always available version. The man who laughed at disrespect to prove he was not sensitive. The man who said, "It's all good," when nothing was good. The man who thought masculinity meant carrying pain so quietly even he forgot it was there. Gone. I kept what survived and stopped apologizing for the man it became. That peace changed the way I moved. I started listening to the cost inside me before the noise outside me. And now I listen. That is the real awakening. The monster did not take control. I stopped silencing the part of me that knew. There is a difference, because if the monster controlled everything, I would become reckless. I do not want reckless. I want integrated. Heart and teeth. Compassion and standards. Love and exit doors. Patience and limits. Strength and rest. That is a complete man. Not harmless. Not cruel. Complete. And complete men make incomplete systems uncomfortable. A workplace that survives on your overwork hates your boundary. A relationship that survives on your insecurity hates your confidence. So be it. So be it. I am not bowing again. Not to guilt. Not to history. Not to loneliness. Not to the fear of being disliked. Not to the fantasy that one more sacrifice will finally make the wrong person love me correctly. Number. That chapter is finished. The monster woke up, but he is not coming for anyone. That is the ending they never expect. He is not coming for revenge. not coming to burn bridges, not coming to make people suffer. He is coming for me, for my time, my attention, my standards, my ambition, my sleep, my discipline, my name. Everything I kept handing away to prove I was good. He is taking it back, quietly, one decision at a time. And if that makes me colder, darker, harder to reach, good. I was too easy to reach when I had no protection. I was too easy to use when I needed everybody to think I was kind. Now kindness is a choice, not a reflex. Loyalty is earned, not assumed. Love is given, not extracted, and peace is protected at all costs. So if they ask what happened, tell them the truth. They kept testing the quiet man because he never gave them the reaction they expected. They kept pushing because every time he forgave, they thought the line had moved. They kept taking because he kept finding more to give. They kept mistaking restraint for fear, patience for weakness, kindness for permission. Until one day, the part of him that had been whispering enough for years finally opened its eyes, and it did not roar. It looked around, counted the cost, closed a few doors, stopped explaining, went to work. That was all. That was enough. They kept testing the monster until he finally woke up. Now the scary part is not what he might do to them. It is what he will never allow them to do to him again.